everyone.
Welcome to the Fourth Line Podcast, part of Full Press Radio. This is March the 7th, 2022. With you today is myself, Carl, and Stevie Nick.
Is that our first March show, or was last week March 1? Last week was March 1.
Last week was February 28th.
This is our first March show.
Welcome to March.
Launching into spring with Batman. I saw Batman this weekend.
Ooh, how was it?
I loved it.
Really? How did it compare to the other Batmans?
It's unlike any Batman movie I've seen. Like, it's not like the other Batman movies at all.
Does it feel Batmanish though?
Yes.
Okay.
It does. It's got the tone really drove the movie, I thought. Like, it made it really, really good. But it's very much a like mystery detective movie. And you barely ever see Bruce Wayne. It's just him as Batman the entire movie.
Which, that's fine. I'm not in it for a Bruce Wayne movie.
Yeah.
No one's watching a Bruce Wayne movie.
It's great. And it was like a semi-amateur Batman. Like, he wasn't really good at gliding and he kept getting punched in the back. It was good.
So if anyone wants to not know this, you can skip ahead the next 30 seconds. Do they give us the origin story of his parents dying?
No.
Yes.
Best part of the whole movie.
Oh, thank goodness.
No pearls hit the concrete.
That's good. We can skip that. We know that by now.
The fact that scene somehow made it into Joker, a movie that was completely independent of anything Batman at all.
Right.
It's just awful. It's time to move past it.
And I'm glad that we have.
Yes.
So that's great. You know what's a usual sign of spring for me though? A big thing. And it would be on right now, but baseball opening up.
Ooh, baseball hasn't opened, Carl.
No. And opening day? Actually, 2 years ago? 2 years ago, I had talked to you about making a trip to Toronto. I was going to meet up, go for dinner, go see some baseball games. My wife was very excited. It was Dollar Dog Day at Skydome. We'd already had bets on who was going to eat the most hot dogs. However, a pandemic started in the middle of us planning that trip. Didn't get to go. That game didn't even happen. Fast forward 2 years later, opening day still not going to happen, but for a very different reason. Major League Baseball currently in the middle of a lockout. Owners locked out the players, and really seems like it is going to be a very likely lengthy and nasty negotiation period.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be moving very quickly at all, right? Like, so far they've only moved the opening series of the season.
I think the opening, maybe the
officially
first two. Yeah, officially the first two.
Yeah, but it's going to be more than that.
And if I was a guessing person, I'd say July would be when I would actually expect them to get going at the soonest.
Man,
wouldn't surprise me at all if
like
we lost the whole season.
Condense spring training and then get into it.
Yeah, right.
Man.
Crazy, but this whole thing got me thinking back to the NHL lockout. Last one, 2012, 2013. So already, I know we've been spoiled, but we're now 10 years, I guess 8 years, 9 years? 9. That's the number I'm looking for.
9 years.
9 years since the last lockout. It seems both more recent and longer than 9 years. If I had to guess, 9 would be like the least likely number I would have picked.
Yeah. I thought, it's been a while, but we just narrowly avoided one, right? I'm just remembering this all right now. Like, there was supposed to be another CBA dispute 2 years ago, I think. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think it all came down to the Olympics.
Players,
right. They're like, one. Okay, players get to go. And then they were like, okay, here's all the other things on the CBA we can work through. And they avoided the lockout.
And it was minor changes that it was like escrow and things like that. Again, large amounts of money aren't minor, but nothing big.
But let's go further back in the time machine to 2013. Like, those were big changes that resulted in the lockout.
Yeah, let's take a look at some of those. So 2013, we lost most of that season. Right? That was not the
That season started in December, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. And this was back when it was before it was cool to have shortened seasons because of things like COVID. But they played 48 games that season. That was the season when, and this will also help you remember, there was a game the Toronto Maple Leafs were up 4-1 in the playoffs on the Boston Bruins and lost, ended up getting eliminated.
That was a game 7.
That is how long ago this was. That's also how long we've been making that joke for. It's been 9 years.
I know, and it hasn't gotten old yet.
You know what? I don't want it to.
It's not going to. It never will.
No. So we lost half the season, still got the playoffs in. But what were some of those sticking points that led to this? Because I mean, baseball's in the same situation right now where they're going to miss likely half a season.
Yeah. Well, the big one that I didn't realize this has only been around for 9 years, the salary cap. I thought the salary cap's been around for way longer than that. It's only introduced in 2013.
Yeah. Again, we're so used to it now. It's so ingrained as like part of the game and part of the sport and part of contracts that you are used to it. I also think of some of those deals that happened right before that, right? You may remember, I remember right before, right? And we saw this again with baseball just now, that they had a number of contracts get signed like before things get too crazy. We had what I remember was it Parise and Suter were for sure signed right before.
Yep.
I want to say the Shea Weber deal also was signed.
Correct.
Right before that offer sheet that got accepted matched by the Preds. He signed that with the Flyers, right?
With the Flyers that got matched by,
But we got the salary cap, and that was a big issue for the league, for players to get a salary cap in, because it definitely, for the top players, it did bring salaries down a significant chunk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. The other thing that this lockout brought in was the limits on the contract extensions. So contracts could only be extended a max of 8 years, or 7 years on a new contract if it's not with the same team.
So we had that, right? And that's what we saw with Parise, Suter, Weber.
Wasn't Luongo one of those too?
Right before.
Can't remember.
That seems, I think it would have been, I think he signed that deal sooner or older than that.
Okay.
But all of those led up to this. And so the question that I have is, I mean, they lost half a season. It's not like they lost the entire season. So half a season of missed revenue, half the season of missed games for us as fans. Do you think that the league is in a better place now than they were before that lockout?
Yes. I think the salary cap has made a world of difference for some of these teams. It's brought a lot more parity into the league. It's made the business side of hockey a lot more interesting for fans. Like, I really think it's added a lot to the fan experience when it comes to thinking about and discussing and analyzing your favorite team. So I think the salary cap overall is just, it's a good thing. And then it's given us a lot of entertainment in other ways too, in terms of getting around the cap, in terms of weaponizing your cap space, working through trades. There's a lot of interesting things that teams have been doing. It just makes it all more interesting, in my opinion.
Yeah. I just want to, before we get too far into this, the salary cap did come in from the previous lockout. So after the missed season, so that we lost an entire season, got the salary cap, but this kind of changed it, right? Brought in those lengths, and also did a pretty big change to the size of that salary cap. Also brought the floor up. So escrow changed with that. So a number of things did change salary cap wise, but.
Okay. So this makes way more sense to me now.
Right.
I was like, how could the salary cap only be 9 years old?
But you're right? Like, the fact of parity is a big thing, and the issues of like just the business of the sport. I think for me, it makes it more, what to expect more than what you would have otherwise. Like, that this is what you could typically expect for a contract. And I know that like the last couple of years, defensemen's contracts have skyrocketed. But there's not going to be a team that's going to come out and just be like, we want this free agent. We are going to pay an unreasonable amount to get them.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's been, and you know what? Maybe this isn't a direct result of the lockout, but the game has gotten better since then too. So it's just all gotten more fun, more interesting. The players have gotten better. The scoring has gone up.
Yeah,
all combined, like it's made for a better game.
Yeah. Well, I think parity is a hugely important thing in sports. One, there needs to be some sort of a way for a bad team to get better, right? Sports is not a normal business where it's like, capitalism rules all and you are designed to like run your opponent into the ground, right? On the competition field, absolutely that's what you want, but that's not healthy for the growth and the future of the game, right? Having one team be able to outspend everyone else because their owners are willing to, or because they're in a huge market, isn't fair to everyone else. And so I think as we see this, right, big thing, like baseball's going through this with salary cap, but also like draft, right? How do you do the draft? And hockey's had their fair share in the last bit of trying to fix the draft so it's more equitable for those teams that are genuinely bad to be able to, right? Limiting the amount that you can move, reducing the amount in the draft lottery. It's all kind of just leading to the bad teams get better.
Yeah. They still have some work to do on the draft, I think, in the NHL.
I think so. But it's better than it was 15, 20 years ago.
Agreed.
It's better than when the Rangers jumped up from like 13th odds to the top.
Totally. Yeah.
So I'm here for it. That said, even though I agree that it's better off now than it was before, I don't want another one.
No, God, no. Nobody wants a lockout, but we're good now for a few years. We don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. The current CBA, I think it extends to like 2025.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which maybe I said this at the last one, but it feels like that might be Gary Bettman's last CBA, this next one.
I would think so, but who knows? Who knows with this guy?
2026. Any guesses on how old Gary Bettman will be in 2026?
In 2026? What is it, 22? Will he be 69?
He's currently 69. He will be 74 years old.
He's 69 years old right now?
Yeah.
I mean, look, hate on the guy all you want. He looks great for his age.
And it explains way more about those kitchen table Zoom press conferences. This is all making a lot of sense now.
Yeah, it's all adding up now. Yeah. That's for sure.
We really should have seen that as the reason why he was older than we thought.
So do you remember then, without looking it up, who won the Stanley Cup in 2013? Who has the asterisk?
Chicago Blackhawks over the Flyers is what I'm going to say. That's what.
Was that year?
I think so.
11. I didn't even look it up. I guess I should do that since I'm asking the question. Hey,
it's a race. It was the Blackhawks over the Flyers.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, Blackhawks over Flyers.
It was the Blackhawks.
No, Boston. Blackhawks.
It was over Boston. See, I knew Boston was in the finals because that's who the Leafs lost to, which is another great thing the lockout gave us was that Leafs collapse. And I know Boston won in 2011, and then it flip-flopped. It was like Chicago, LA for like 3 or 4 years, but I never remember which year came first.
Well, now you know. It was Chicago did it in 2013.
There you go.
Problem solved. That was not the terrible. No, though, because we talked about the Chicago Flyers Stanley Cup final with the worst goaltending ever.
Just awful goaltending.
That one we can be certain. To cycle back for one last time to last week, Jonathan Bernier was definitely better than either goaltender in that series.
Yes, at every point in his career.
He would have been the best goalie on either of those teams. Hey, one thing that the NHL CBA with the salary cap does give us, I think, one thing that has gotten worse since the salary cap is trade deadline. Would you agree?
Yes.
So as we approach, right, teams have less and less. If I take a look right now, how many teams do you think currently have zero cap space?
2.
11.
Have zero? Like actually zero?
There's 11 teams with projected cap space of $0.
Holy, you're right.
Yeah. So that includes like long-term IR and things like that. Obviously, teams will and can manipulate that. Actual amounts, there are 3 teams with less than $1 million in current cap space. Which means like those teams, you have to go dollar for dollar moving guys out. And that's what makes this trade deadline tricky, is because you either have to manipulate the salary cap like we see the Tampa Bay Lightning doing, like we continue to, Vegas is becoming experts in that as well. They lose to Tampa and then they're like, all right, this is what we have to do. We have to, if you can't beat them, join them. So I think that's going to really hinder a lot of movement. I mean, we see it year after year, but I think this year it'll hurt it. But our trade deadline's a little bit later this year, which helps.
Yeah, I still don't see that much happening. Like it's just going to be a repeat of previous years where we have a big show all day and nothing super interesting happens. For one, I think any big moves that happen are going to happen before the actual trade deadline. But I don't even know what kind of big move, like what would be defined as a big move. Because you look at some of these teams that have $0 in projected cap space: Vegas, Tampa, Edmonton, Winnipeg. Who else we got? Washington, Carolina, Pittsburgh. Like these would all be teams that I would classify, put in the buyers column heading into the trade deadline.
Absolutely.
They're not buying anything with that much cap space.
They can't, right? Especially, and you look at that list. Tampa and Carolina are at that fringe of zero cap space. The Flames have less than $1 million in cap space. It's like those are 3 teams that would be buying. I mean, the Flames already made their move, right? They went out and they got Tyler Toffoli. And that move itself might be, it's outside of the trade window, but that might be the biggest trade we have this season.
Yeah, it very well could be. Would not surprise me.
So what then are some teams? This is where we kind of take a look at the fringe of the playoff standings. And what are some teams maybe at that bubble or at the top that you're looking at as potential buyers?
Minnesota. They don't have a ton of cap space, but they're at just over 2 million right now. With a little bit of cap gymnastics, they could maybe fit middle 6 player in there, a depth forward.
Yeah. Is there anyone that you have your eye on as a potential? And when we're looking at like trade deadlines and some of those pieces, right? Looking at likely a team out of the playoffs, trying to move someone. Is there a player that you think Minnesota could go after?
Man, I don't know. Like there's not a ton of names on this free agent list that fall within the cap space that they have available. Like, I don't know, Kasperi Kapanen, but Pittsburgh probably doesn't want to move him.
Why?
I'm just looking at expiring deals, by the way.
Right. Yeah. And Pittsburgh won't because they're in a playoff
Why would
spot,
they?
right?
Yeah.
Because if you look, so Minnesota's, I think, fairly securely, I guess not as fair as they want. They're 3 points up on the Oilers, who are at the playoffs right now. So they certainly could drop out. They looking to add, which is interesting because I think some of those teams where there are guys who could be moved out are interesting. Last year, we heard a lot of talk from the Nashville Predators about how everyone was for sale and then nobody left. And then even just within the last couple of weeks, we heard Philip Forsberg's name come up in trade rumors. And then there was like, we didn't ask for a trade, so he might not be traded. But that's a guy, right? Nashville currently right on that playoff bubble. If they again decide that people are available, or if they want to just continue to work this fringe bubble, that is a piece that could net a huge return.
Yeah, could, but Nashville's got a decision to make. Like, do they want to play and push into the playoffs? Because if they do, they probably want to hold on to Forsberg.
For sure.
Right? You're not gonna make a huge push without him on your roster.
No.
So like I don't know. That's a decision that they have to make. You know, I think from my perspective, in my opinion, if I'm Nashville, like, are we going to sit here and do this song and dance every single year? Because every year we seem to be in this position. Just on the outside, maybe we can steal a couple games in the latter half of the season, sneak into the first round, and then what? And then you got to face like Colorado, Calgary, St. Louis.
Well, that's the situation. The team that I think of the most in that kind of bubble was the Wild of the last decade, right? They've never been great, but they've always been hanging around.
Yeah. So at some point you got to make a call on what's your goal here. Cause like, look, getting into the playoffs is not nothing. We know it makes teams a lot of money, even just playing in the first round.
Cause it's about $1 million per home game in revenue is about what teams pull in.
Right. So that's at least 4 million. Well, $2 million, I guess.
Yeah.
At least. But if your ultimate goal is to compete and win a Stanley Cup, I don't think this is the roster for Nashville, and they should probably be selling.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And what is interesting to me is looking at these deals and the expiring contracts that are coming up. None of these UFA deals are players that are on teams out of the playoffs, right? Like the best expiring deals are all teams at best on the fringe, or they're restricted free agents, right? Like there are virtually none, right? If you were to sort by points, and this is one that I think should be on the market, but Thomas Hertl, right? He does have a no trade clause, but you would think that he would clearly waive that to go to a playoff team.
I don't know. You would think so. This guy keeps flip-flopping though on what he wants to do. He wants to stay in San Jose. He doesn't want to stay in San Jose. He wants to negotiate his extension. He wants to be traded. He has a no trade clause, so I guess he has some say, but they should move him.
Absolutely, they should. Now, so let's cycle back. Okay, I got distracted by looking at players, but you mentioned the Wild as a team looking for pieces. Heading on back over to the East, I know Kyle Dubas mentioned this weekend in a press conference that he is not interested, that he is content with the Leafs goaltending. 2 questions. Do you believe him? And should he be content?
No, I don't think he's content with the goaltending. Do I think he should be? No. I don't think their goalies have delivered for them the way that they needed them to this year. You know, I think they're lucky they've been bailed out by how offensively powerful the Leafs are.
Oh, absolutely. Right. I mean, Austin Matthews just scored his 40th goal of the season tonight.
Yeah.
So like they're clearly doing what they need to continue to win games, but come playoff time, I don't know if that's going to work. And they're a team that could use some assistance, but there's really only like one goalie that could start that's available. And that's Marc-Andre Fleury.
Right. And I think I saw this week that he came out and said he doesn't actually want to be traded anywhere. So
yeah, he's content.
That could be the end of that anyways.
I mean, what do you think? Thomas Greiss in Detroit. Yeah. Is he a name that we could see even like, because we see teams all the time making a move for like a third goalie or a backup. Is he a name that a team should go out and try to get?
I mean, I feel like it kind of comes down to the Jonathan Bernier argument again. You want to do a deep dive on Thomas Greiss?
Well, is he the best goalie on that team this year? Is that what you're telling me?
I don't think so. No.
Thanks. I mean, Nedeljkovic has been pretty good, so that's not a slight on Greiss.
Yeah, I think Greiss is an okay goalie. Like, yeah, if you need some depth, by all means, but I don't know if you're going to take on a third goalie for almost $4 million in cap, even if Detroit retains some of it. Like, I can't see it.
Okay. So you think he'll probably stay without that? Yeah. All right. Let's do some rapid fire then. Okay. So you mentioned Nashville. Sorry. Nashville was a team that you think maybe should be reevaluating some of their choices if they're buyers or sellers. So let's do some of this. Okay. We're going to go through wild card teams and below. Okay. And anyone tied with wild card. So you already mentioned Minnesota's a buy. You think they should buy? Dallas, buy or sell?
Sell.
So you're currently in a playoff spot, tied with the Wild for third in that division. Interestingly, Joe Pavelski is a free agent after this year. If they are selling, that is a piece.
That is a piece. You're right. That's what's his cap hit? It's
pretty
hefty, right?
Yeah. So it wouldn't be an easy move by any means, but they could make it happen. All right. So Pavelski is on Nick's list of apparently available trade pieces.
Yes.
Oilers, buy or sell?
Neither.
So just stand pat.
Stand pat.
I mean, if Dallas is selling, they're only 3 points back at Dallas. So
maybe the Oilers should go for Thomas Greiss, though.
I mean, he's a good goalie, but he's better than Mike Smith and everyone else in it.
Honestly, just throw darts at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, it can't hurt. I mean, is Ken Holland going to go get Thomas Greiss? Is that what you're saying?
Again?
Yeah, he did it once.
I think it was an Yzerman move, actually. I can't remember. Anyways, it doesn't matter.
Anaheim Ducks, buy or sell?
Also neither, I think. Are they in a playoff spot right now?
They're 3 back of Nashville.
That's a tough spot to be in. I'm more buy than sell on Anaheim.
Okay. Last one in the West, 4 points back of a playoff spot. Vancouver Canucks.
Buy.
All right. Now this seems the East. I know we talked about it last week, and we've talked about it before, but the gap from playoffs to not playoffs, I'm fairly certain that the 8 teams in the playoff spots is virtually a lock, is it not?
Yeah, it's pretty close.
So if you have not looked at the Eastern Conference standings in a while, Boston Bruins, Washington Capitals are the 2 wildcard teams sitting at 72 and 69 points. Below them, the Columbus Blue Jackets at 59 points, 10 points from them. 15 points below the Washington Capitals. Second team out of the playoffs are the Detroit Red Wings. None of those teams. And then it's another 4 back. The only team that was a projected playoff team that's really not in the East, the New York Islanders, are 19 points back of a playoff spot right now. But only 2 teams between them. Unreal that we're sitting here before the trade deadline and they're just shuffling positions at this point.
I mean, it's going to make our job easier over the next few weeks.
Yeah. I mean, it makes the elimination station very easy. We just keep picking on the Eastern Conference.
Exactly. Wait till the West settles a little bit.
Yeah. I know you're going to be jonesing to put the Sharks back in there, but hey, we'll see what happens. That said, any final thoughts on the trade deadline?
I think it's going to be boring. Which is funny for me to say, considering every week when we're like, what are we going to talk about? I'm like, trade deadline? But now that I sit here and think about it, I'm like, I don't expect much from it.
Yeah. I hope that we get some trades to talk about next week. Like, give us a little bit of something, because it's only 2 weeks away, right? Less than 2 weeks, technically, because it's like noon Eastern or 2 o'clock or whatever it is, right? So less than 2 weeks away. We'll be here with our review of the trade deadline. We'll see what and how that looks like. But Could be a fun, interesting show. Could be a little something different for you.
Could be. We'll see.
Well, let's take a break here. We're going to be back on the other side with the aforementioned Elimination Station.
Elimination Station.
3, 2, 1.
So I'm looking at this list right now of teams that we've already eliminated and talking about a new team that we have to eliminate. We've eliminated a lot of teams from the Eastern Conference already. Like we actually don't have that many weeks to lean on this easy East elimination.
Okay, so remind us then. Let's start in the East. If it's easy for me to ask you to split this list, who have we eliminated in the East already?
You want to do the East? Wait, should we play our Elimination Station theme song?
We already played it.
Okay, good.
Do you even listen to this show, or are you just looking at your lists?
I'm just looking at my list. I like to rearrange them and read them.
Okay. Well,
before I go to bed.
Thank you. I'm glad that someone is taking care of it.
So far we have eliminated from the Eastern Conference the Montreal Canadiens, the Buffalo Sabres, the New Jersey Devils, the Ottawa Senators, and the Philadelphia Flyers.
So of the teams not in the playoffs, we've eliminated all of them except for the Islanders, Red Wings, and Blue Jackets.
Correct.
Okay.
There's
only 3 more to eliminate in the East.
In the West, we've eliminated Arizona, we've eliminated Seattle, and we've eliminated Chicago.
Ooh. So we have 5 more to eliminate in the West. 8 more weeks. We might have to have a double elimination coming up here.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
We'll start with... Go ahead.
It's like those fun Survivor nights, right? All of a sudden they're like, it's a double elimination. Everyone loses their mind. And then like one person comes back the next week. But this time, no one's coming back. No one's getting back out of this elimination station this year.
No, I don't think so. It's shaping up to be pretty clear.
Which means what's going to be more boring? The playoff race or the trade deadline?
The trade deadline. It's always more boring.
At least you've got shuffling, right?
Yeah.
At least got some teams, but interesting. I want to park this. This is the thing. A little inside the podcast studio conversation every week for the last 4-5 weeks, we sit down and we say, all right, let's recap what we talk about tonight. And then we say, and you know what? If we end a little early, we end a little early. We always try to make the show about an hour. And we always say, we end early, we end early. And we never end early.
It's gotten to the point where like sometimes we'll be like, well, maybe tonight's the night we ended early.
And tonight seemed like the night, and it still might be, but I'm going to ask this question for you, but I've now forgotten.
If I want to do a double elimination?
No, that wasn't it.
Okay.
We see this in the NBA a lot where like players will get rest days and things like that. Do you think we'll see that in the NHL this year with like playoff seats locked up?
I think so. I think it happens every year to a certain extent, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I think we could see it starting sooner and continuing even longer this year.
I think so, especially in the East, because it's not even just you're locked into a playoff spot. Like the matchups are going to be locked up pretty soon, I think.
Right. Like you've got, like Rangers, Pittsburgh will probably have 2-3 in that division locked up. So like they're playing for home ice. Tampa, Florida is really going to be the only real battle. And then Toronto, Boston. Do you want to be the wild card and play Ranger or Hurricanes or Tampa? Or do you want to play Florida? And I'm not sure which I think Florida versus Tampa. I'd rather play Florida because I don't want to play the 2-time defending champs, but it's not particularly that big of a difference.
No, there's no good choice there.
No. You will lose to either of them. Toronto.
You will lose to either of them. Toronto.
Right. So, Elimination Station. This is where we pick a team that we've eliminated from playoff contention. And this is a tough decision for me tonight because I want to go out east again or out west, but it's so much easier in the east.
Yeah. Do you want me to tell you where I'm going, or should we just count down or do you want to talk about your dilemma a little longer?
No, we're going to end the show early tonight. So.
Okay.
So.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. And then we say the name of the team.
I just need to check one more thing before I lock it in.
Okay. All
right, I'm ready.
Okay, you ready? 3, 2, 1. The New York Islanders. No, you're going west?
Now, here's the thing. I had it down to those two teams. I had it down to the Islanders and the Sharks. Those were my two teams. I knew last week you went Sharks. I thought we were going to match.
Well, so I was debating between those two as well. And what cemented me on the Islanders was our conversation about the standings 5 minutes ago.
Yes.
And then I looked at it like San Jose, they have more points than the Islanders.
They have more points than the Islanders. The Islanders did what maybe let me give the Islanders a little bit more credit. They have 4 games in hand on the Sharks. And so by the time those games in hand are done, maybe they're ahead. And that's ultimately why I swung Sharks, is because they only have like 26 games left this season.
Okay, that's fair. And like, even though they currently have more points than the Islanders, they are pretty out of it within their own division. Like, I don't think they're going to climb the ranks here.
And reason number 2 that I went to Islanders is because they're currently are tied against the Avalanche. If you're tying the Avalanche, I can't put you in the elimination station. That just looks bad on my team.
Right.
I can't, by the time that we release this episode, that game will be done. And if I eliminate the Islanders and then they beat the Avalanche, what does that say?
It says there's some dark magic at play here.
Some dark days at play and on the horizon. Here's what's happening. I'm not ready for that.
All right, then let's go west. I'm fine with it. I was fine with it last week.
Welcome to the Elimination Station, San Jose.
There you go. There you go. And when I type it in my phone, it autocorrects to Dan Jose.
Do you know someone named Dan Jose?
No. And you know what? It shouldn't be that funny, but it's hilarious. Pacific Division, San Jose Sharks. Pretty steady fall from grace for them, right? Over the last few years.
Yeah.
From basically cup contender to, well, almost the furthest thing from it. But they're just, they signed some bad deals. And like, there was some bad luck. This team hit some bad luck, right? Like, some of these players, I think, aged out a little sooner than they expected them to, or than these players should have.
Well, Erik Karlsson certainly did.
Yeah, it's a big one.
His health is why he aged out. It's not like an unexpected thing. He had significant surgeries in his Ottawa days, continued to have health issues in San Jose. And I think that is a big reason why this team is where it is, because he's not anywhere close to being what $11.5 million should get you.
Yeah, it's a big bet to lose. And like, what are you thinking with the guy with that much injury problems? Sign him to that big of a deal.
Well,
anyways.
And we knew at the time, right? That deal will not end well. Yeah. Marc-Edouard Vlasic deal will not end well. Yeah. Brent Burns deal will not end. 40-year-old defensemen are not coming out and playing every single day like you need them to when this is happening.
Yeah, but they were signed at a much brighter time for the team, right? Like they were signed at a time when everyone was in their prime and they had a cup window. And they said, if we win a cup with these guys, the latter years of these contracts are not going to matter. They won't hurt as much.
Right. It will be irrelevant. It will have been worth it. Right.
Right. Exactly.
You look at the Chicago Blackhawks right now, and sure, it's disappointing, but they won Stanley Cups.
Yep. That didn't happen for the Sharks. So now they're just left with all these painful contracts that like they're not going to be able to get rid of.
No. And here's what hurts even more with this. Okay. You look at who, because a lot of that, I did not think that Erik Karlsson trade was particularly great when it took place. Okay. But in the end, it was Erik Karlsson. They got, and I'm trying to read through these different parts. I do believe it looks like this year they're still this season trading their second round pick. No. Okay, so that one's gone from, I'm not even sure what, Aiden Hill contract. Okay. If you read through just the hockey reference page for this Erik Karlsson trade is terrible. But the biggest piece that the Senators got out of this was Josh Norris. Certainly a useful piece for them now. Other than that, it really comes down to like Norris and a bunch of prospects and smaller pieces, maybe some that will still develop. But
well, they got Chris Tierney too, who's like okay.
Yeah, I'm not getting excited about Chris.
But they also, I mean, he's a depth guy. There's someone the Wild could go after. But they also picked up Tim Stützle with the draft pick.
So Stützle, Josh Norris, huge gets.
Yeah.
So the Sharks, if you look at this team and you replace Erik Karlsson with Josh Norris and Tim Stützle, they're in a better spot. Hindsight being what it is, you've covered why they made that trade. So moving forward, what do they do to get back into a playoff spot? Because it seems like, interestingly enough, it honestly seems like they've already started rounding a corner. Am I wrong on that kind of feeling that I have about them?
Like you think from a performance perspective?
Yes. Like I feel better about them this year than I did last year.
Yes, I would agree with that. They've played better. They've performed better this year. Like they were very bad last year. But I think a lot of that too came down to their goaltending because Martin Jones was not good for them last year at all.
No, not in the slightest.
Now they've run into goalie troubles this year as well.
Yes, but they also they've run into goalie troubles, but they've also been running out. James Reimer had gotten hurt. Aiden Hill. They now have Alex Stalock on the team. Just picked him up for nothing from the Oilers. They're like, well, we need someone to play in net.
Yeah.
So
they're just grabbing whatever's available and throwing them in there, which is not a great place to be, right? Because you want your players to have confidence in your goalie.
Yeah, and clearly not. So improving, but Logan Couture, right? He signed long term. Timo Meier still has term with this team, but we already mentioned during our trade deadline segment, Thomas Hertl is a piece that could be here, could not be here, and I think that the next steps that they take will really define his choice and what they end up and what they do.
Yeah, I think so. Right. Like it's the same conversation we had about Nashville earlier. They got to make a decision of what they want to do here. And can someone like your next steps on Thomas Hertl is a huge part of that. Like, do you think that you can still be competitive and go for the next couple of years? Go for it. I don't know. Personally, I don't see it, but you've got all these big names on contracts that can't be moved. So I guess you kind of have to.
Absolutely, you do. And so looking at him, right? Because he's only 28 years old. If you were to sign him to, let's say, would you say a 5-year deal is a reasonable expectation for his next contract? Do you think he'll get longer?
No, I don't think he'll get longer than that.
Okay, so 5 years. So 33 years old, likely will have I guess statistically, usually NHL players actually peak at 27, 28. So he's already peaked. do you think he will still be a useful, valuable piece to this Sharks team if he signs? Will they be within that 5 years? Do you think they'll be playoff contenders?
No. But I think they got to try their darndest.
To keep him? Convince him they will?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, so what would make them a playoff contender next year, in 2 years, in 3 years? Obviously, they need a goalie. Okay, we covered that.
Yeah. And
they need even just like a backup goalie, like an NHL standard backup goalie,
right,
like a Jonathan Bernier.
Which they thought that they had, right? I mean, like they thought that they had 2 NHL caliber backups and would start one of them every single day, is what they thought.
Sure.
In Reimer and Hill.
Sure.
Hoping that Hill could develop into a future starter for this team was the hope, right? I mean, they traded a 2nd round pick for him, obviously had some sort of value, has not panned out. He has definitely been the worst of the 2 goalies this year.
Yeah.
So do you do that? Because I think that this has become kind of a trend of, do you trade and draft and develop a goalie, or do you draft and develop a goalie, or do you trade or sign a goalie? And this is a team I think is in a big need for developing multiple goalies. Like, I would say that they should be drafting goalies every year for the next foreseeable future.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I also think they need to either trade or sign a goalie. Like, based on what we're talking about, Hurdle for the next 5 years, you got Couture, Burns, Vlasic, Carlson, who are not going anywhere. You got LeBanc and Meyer for another year. Like, they should be going out and trying to get a goalie actively for the short term.
Well, and even with the fact that they are spending $26.5 million of cap space on Burns, Vlasic, and Carlson, they currently still have $4 million in space. And I think that's kind of what saves them, is the fact that they have locked up some pretty solid players on reasonable deals, right? The Meyer deal, the Hurdle deal are good.
Yeah.
But Hurdle's contract's going to go up, and there's not a lot of flexibility in that range for them to go out and get someone. So I don't think there's enough cap space unless, Erik Karlsson ends up on long-term IR. Then you've got that flexibility you need. And it's unfortunate to already say that at 31, that we're like, maybe Karlsson won't play again next year. But for the Sharks, I think that's a better prospect for them.
Yeah, I mean, they're shedding a few contracts this year. Like, there's $3 million opening up in cap space just in Ryan Zingle, Andrew Cogliano, and Alexander Barabanov.
But you need, I mean, those are essentially like league minimum deals. Someone's going to have to come in and play. Like, someone's going to play, and it's going to cost you $1 million.
Yeah, I guess so. You're backfilling that. I'm not familiar with their prospect pipeline, but they haven't been drafting very high for very long. So
no. And they were they traded a bunch for Ottawa. They've certainly lost some picks in the last number of years.
This is like one of the worst positions a team can be in. This is where I start to feel kind of hopeless when talking about teams like this. Not hopeless. It's just like, there's no end in sight for the pain. It's going to take a long time.
Yeah. It's not an overnight solution for them.
No, you gotta just keep being mediocre for a few years until these bad deals run out, and then you can really start. But man, those are going to be some tough years ahead of them.
Now, one thing that the Sharks did last year at the deadline, and I could very easily see them doing it again this year, was they became the stopping ground for teams. So they would get a player, retain money, and then trade that player. So if you were looking to make this work, and through that, they didn't get a ton. They got a 4th and a 5th for their cap space. And I think that's a thing that not enough teams do. And the fact that they made that possible last year, working with Vegas and Chicago and then Toronto and Columbus. You may not remember this, but Nick Foligno, temporary San Jose Shark.
That's true. I forgot about that.
Do you have a Foligno Sharks jersey?
I don't know.
Shoot.
I couldn't get one because he never wore the cool 90s one. And that's the Sharks jersey I would get.
Okay. That makes sense.
Also, he never wore a Sharks jersey, so there's that too.
He never. So you could get his name on any Sharks jersey you want. Is what you're saying.
I guess so. Yeah.
But I think in general, I mean, this team's on the upswing, but like you said, not an easy job for the front office. I don't envy them, and I very much feel for the fans. I mean, they had a very long run. I'm not that sad for Sharks fans.
They were good for a while.
Very, very long extended run of being quite good. So
they even went to the Stanley Cup Finals.
And that's more than a lot of fan bases could get from a playoff window. So
yeah,
that window closed. Going to be a bit before that window opens back up again.
I think so. Sorry, Sharks fans.
Well. All right. On to that was very flippant of me.
Well.
That's their problem. I just got focused looking. Full discretion, what I was doing was I was like, is that high sticking game for tonight started yet? That's what I was looking at. And I don't know if it has.
Which one is tonight? No, we got Battle of Alberta tonight.
Yeah, that's at
Starts
7 o'clock.
7:30.
Oh, that's a surprising start. All right. This is the final week of high sticking. I did not have a chance to get the points in from yesterday's game, but the top of the standings is still tight. We've had lead changes multiple times in the last couple of weeks. Current leader without yesterday's game, without Monday's game. Jordan is 2 points up on Brody, 7 points up on Adam, and 8 points up on Matt. It is a tight race. Still, anyone could win this. At the end of this week, we reset the table. And I need to sort out, because I think a lot of people have been having fun with, let me know your thoughts. Have you been having fun with just predict the winner and the score? Because we were talking about switching to over-unders after this, but I am very content, and I've been enjoying it. I've been enjoying how close it's been. Let me know if you want to keep going with one, keep doing this, or switch to over-unders. Nonetheless, we have 6 more days of games to pick. We pick the game. You tell us which team you think will win. So I got one entry this week where they just told me a score. You need to tell me who you think is going to win and the score of the game for each night of the week. Head on over to our Twitter at Fourth Line Podcast with the number 4. Tuesday night, Nick. I'm seeing 2, 3, 4 good games. There is a lot. 5 potentially good games. It's a good slate on Tuesday.
There's some really good games on Tuesday. I think we should watch Florida-Pittsburgh.
That's good. The only other one, I'm going to mention it just because, but I'm very content. Nashville-Dallas fighting for playoffs. Those are the 2 wildcard teams in the West.
I mean, I'm happy to do that one if you want to go there.
Let's
split
that
good
one.
Game. That's going to be a good game.
If we end up having more Dallas or Nashville later in the week, we'll go back.
Okay.
Wednesday has only one good game though, and even that I'm not sure about.
Washington Edmonton
is definitely the better of Montreal, Vancouver.
Agreed.
Ooh.
Thursday.
Ooh, 2 very good games that day. A couple cross-conference games.
I think we need to do Colorado,
Carolina.
Yeah. That's going to be the funnest game. The most fun game.
It is going. I mean, did you watch the Flames Avalanche game from this past week?
I didn't.
On Saturday. It was an incredible game. Flames got very lucky that Vladar played as well as he did, because that was a close one.
All right. Friday.
The other good game on Thursday though is the Flames Lightning that night. Stanley Cup rematch from years back.
Yeah. I forgot about that.
Flames fans never will. That goal is in.
Yeah.
Vegas Pittsburgh on Friday.
Yeah. I think that's objectively the best game to watch too.
Battle of teams that wish they still had Marc-Andre Fleury. I said number 12. Saturday, the 12th. we start to run out of good games.
Yeah, I mean, Tampa, Edmonton, maybe. Otherwise, we're going back to either Dallas or Nashville.
I was to say, Nashville's a little too early. At 10:30, a 12:30 Eastern time start is a little too early.
Yeah.
I'm good with Tampa, Edmonton.
Okay, let's do it.
Sunday, a rematch of Flames Avalanche is happening.
Do it.
That likely is going to be our best game of the night. Calgary, Colorado is that. And then next Monday, we get to skip it because that's where we're going to hand out a jersey, which is fine because I refuse to put Ottawa, Arizona as our must-watch game of the day.
Oh, man. We lucked out there, hey?
Thank goodness that we didn't have to tell people to watch Ottawa, Arizona. Next Monday night, just take the night off. We're going to record a podcast. You're going to sit at home refreshing your iTunes, waiting for it to show up. And then eventually it will, and you can turn off the hockey game. And that's what we're going to do. So to continue playing, head on over to @4thLinePodcast with the number 4 on Twitter for more about our show, the4thlinepodcast.com, where you can find great stuff everywhere to find our show. We got some fun articles. If you did not go and listen after listening to last week's show, head over to our website for the rest of Mike Laybourne's breakdown of Jonathan Bernier. Missing out? Luckily, it's a website, not a Twitter account. And Twitter's still there, but it's just like harder to find it. Our website, it's still there. It's literally the number one thing. You just click on the picture of Jonathan Bernier and you're right there. So do that. The4thlinepodcast.com and subscribe to our show wherever you are. It'll be waiting for you, like I said, Monday night. So next Monday, instead of watching Ottawa and Arizona play what's likely going to be an incredibly high-scoring game, you can just listen to us instead. So we'll be there. Until next week.
Time for us to wrap up another Fourth Line show. I know what you're thinking. You don't want us to go. Like our show this week, I'm going to end this song early.